NFL draft. Were any of you born in 2000? Never mind. And later won a Super Bowl with the Indianapolis Colts. In addition to founding Corey's Kids, a local mentorship program, and serving as the president of the Big Ben Pop Warner, Senator Simon is a Seminole Booster, Director of Athlete Alumni Engagement and Development. He resides here in Tallahassee with his wife and his son. Please help me welcome Senator Corey Simon. And next to my immediate left is Representative Allison Tant. She currently serves Representative District 9 in the Florida House of Representatives, which includes Leon, Jefferson, and Madison counties. Along with being a state representative, she's the founder of Independence Landing, an innovative and affordable housing option for adults with a range of intellectual and developmental disabilities, and the founding chair emeritus for KEYS, which is Keys to Exceptional Youth Success, a scholarship program for students with disabilities. Representative Tant also is an FSU grad and is an advisory member of the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities and active member of Tallahassee Rotary Club, Capital Women's Network, Tiger Bay, Board of Directors of the Challenger Learning Center, and the Advisory Board for the Adult and Community Education Program for Leon County Schools, and the Regional Representative for the Anti-Defamation League of Florida. Representative Tant and her husband have 3 children, 2 bonus children, and 2 dotting grandchildren. Representative Allison Tant, ladies and gentlemen. So once again, thank you all for being here. It's a pleasure to have this conversation. Let's delve in if we can. So the first couple of questions I'm going to pose and ask both of you to provide your response to. Then there are some individual questions for each of them. At a certain point, we're going to pause and allow you, our audience, to ask some questions. There's a microphone in both aisleways. We do ask if you will come to the microphone so everyone can hear your question. All right, let's delve in. Senator Simon, Representative Tant, considering the theme of today's conversation, do you believe there is civil discord in our world? If yes, please elaborate. And if no, please elaborate.
Which one do you want to go first?
We'll go with you first, Representative Tant.
So I do believe that we are very divided right now. I think that I remember maybe about 8 years ago, I was up and visiting some folks in D.C., and someone who knows told me that back there, it was not terribly long ago, that people had this camp and that camp, and in the middle, there was about a 10-point spread. Now it's maybe, then it was, at that point it was 2. He said at this point now, this much later, it's only a 2-point spread. I think it's worse. And I think that what's led to that, the polarization that we've seen is, we've seen a decline in the media being able to get the attention of people, but also we've seen the social media increases that we've seen, and so competing with that is hard, and it's led to the polarization. But I think that Senator Simon and I are a really good example for working across aisles. He's really good in the Senate at that. I'm really good in the House at that, to focus on the things that can be done versus the things that we can't necessarily all get to an agreement point on. And so I think that I do think that there is a divide, and I do think that we need to do things to address that divide.
Senator Simon, same question, sir.
Well, I agree with Representative Tant. There is this great divide, and I think part of that has been our social media. It's been a way to create this discourse that we have behind closed doors, behind emojis, and once you get in your own home and you say whatever you want to say, and then it goes out into the ether, then you'll find your audience, and oftentimes that audience will magnify that argument, because you can always find something that someone will agree with you on in any space. You can say the most ridiculous thing, and you may put it out there as a joke, and someone will come back, yeah, I agree with you. Oh, yeah, that's true. And so what we have now is social media, and the bots that are created through it have created this pull between us. And it's not just political lines. It's everything. If I go out there and say the sky is green, and I can get someone to grab a hold of that and say, yep, the sky is green, they're going to go out there and put it out again, and eventually There's going to be someone that's going to agree that the sky is green. You can find an audience for anything that you believe is true. And so what we have now is we have this space where everyone has a voice, and every feeling can find an audience. And that feeling doesn't actually have to be true, it just has to be your feeling. And what happens is we're so polar opposites in our opinions that we can't sit down and actually have a conversation. And that's a scary place to be. That's why I spend most of my time, and if you ever watch the Florida Channel, and I know it's not the most entertaining thing to watch, but if you see the cameras kind of pan, and I'm on camera a little bit, I spend a lot of time in the back with a lot of my Democratic colleagues because there are some things that we agree on, and there are things that we can work together on. But the media, social media, will never show you those things. You'll never see them. And why is that? Because there is someone that's benefiting from the separation that we've created among ourselves. And that's a scary place to be. I show up at places and folks can just look at the R next to my name if it's at a political event. And they automatically have a perception of who I am. They've never met me. They don't know anything about me. They don't know how I grew up. They know none of those things. But because we have created this separation, I've got to bridge that gap to get to actual issues based on the feeling that someone gets. And so we've got to be better. We've got to do better in how we communicate. That's why, when folks ask me about our delegation here in Leon County, and there's 4 of us, I sit as the senator, Representative Tant, Representative Franklin, and then Representative Shope has a small piece here in Tallahassee. 2 Ds, 2 Rs that spend a lot of time together, talk together, hang out together. We have a great time because it's important for all of us, all 4 of us, regardless of where our political persuasions are, to show you all that you can have a functional government regardless of political party. And that's important.
President Tant,
I'd like to follow up with what Senator Simon said. I also think that we, behind a screen, people will say things or type things that they would never say to you in person. You could read things on comments that people say that would never be said to you at church on Sunday or in the grocery store and when you were buying your groceries. People, that anonymity and that space there has given people license to really excoriate one another and too many times for various things. Like Senator Simon said, I can go and say that the sky is green, and then so you can get people to agree with you, and then you'll have the other side come out and go, can you believe Senator Simon said that the sky is green? What's wrong with him? Doesn't he understand this, that, or the other? I mean, it's easy to, and we become, and all of us in politics become like some sort of punching bag for those kinds of things. And so the other thing is, I also think COVID and the fact that once I was talking to a mother last night who's got a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old, and she said, with COVID, my kids were handed a device, and that device is how you comport yourself with your world. And so getting us out from behind our devices, where we have learned to snap off quick answers or curtly respond to something or assume the worst about somebody we've never met, I think has exacerbated the situation. And one of the things that I think Senator Simon and I both experienced in this last however long it's been, is that we both are from this area, right? I mean, Senator Simon and I both here, we both have a wider life experience than that, but we both have had to lean into communities that didn't know us as a result of redistricting, for example. And so I know that I did, and I know that Senator Simon has, taken the tack of, instead of going in and talking or making assumptions about people, I've really taken the time to focus on listening and being part of the community versus coming in like I know it all, or coming in like you're stuck with me and say, here's how it's going to be. And so I have to get past, just like Senator Simon faces the R after his name, I face the D after mine in some of those. And so getting past people's assumptions, getting past people's judgments about, and we've become very tribal on that political front. And so breaking down those tribal barriers, I think, is very important for us, because what has to happen, just like what did just happen with the hurricane, is we've got to be there for one another. And it doesn't matter if you're a Republican, a Democrat, an independent. And one of the things I think is important to focus on is that I bet you, if you're the staunchest Republican you've ever been and I'm the staunchest Democrat you'd ever meet, that we both feel the same way about our communities. We both love our families. We both have our faith path. We both have a love of the people that we are around. And that's the thing we should focus on, and versus like what we can say about each other that we disagree on. So that's my thought.
That was the first question, ladies and gentlemen. So I do want to ask a follow-up question, because both of you spoke to a word that I think was actually going to lead to my second question. Again, this will be a request of you both to give a response. And so Americans, I believe, overwhelmingly are asking their politicians to work toward compromise. And both of you have spoke openly about your working together in a collaborative manner. And I too can attest to the work that you all do for this area. And so if you are willing, what does the word compromise mean to you? And how do you, with that definition, try to implement that in action, not just in hearing it?
So I didn't come from politics. I wasn't a political science major. I was in Library of Information Studies. It was about accessing information. And for me, when I think of compromises, it's both sides don't get all that they want. We all want our own way, but oftentimes you can't get your own way. My mom used to tell me that all the time. Just because you cry and yell doesn't mean you're going to get your way. And so understanding how that was as a child, now as a 46-year-old man, that further emphasizes the point that she was making all of those years ago. I can't get my own way regardless of how much I stand in front of a microphone and scream and shout as to why I believe that I'm right. That's just not how life works. Just because you scream and yell doesn't mean you get your way. And there is someone that's on the opposing side of your viewpoint that has some very good and valid points. But if you're so busy screaming and yelling as to why you're right, you can't hear why someone else has a point. And that's important. When I preface what I said, where I didn't come through and I didn't grow up in politics, politics has always been, when I think of the word politics or politician, that's always had a negative connotation with many folks. And so what I try to focus on is how to be a good statesman. How do I represent people that don't even agree with me? Showing up and talking about issues that I may agree or disagree with, and still be able to see and hear someone else's point of view. See, if you're so busy yelling, you're not spending any time listening. My mom used to tell me all the time, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. You should listen twice as much as you talk. And that's what I try and do and spend time. That's why I spend time with people that I may not agree with on everything politically, but not every good idea is going to come from one party. Got news for you. At some point in time, real life is going to run up against your politics and things are going to shift for you. And it's important that you understand, if you can't come to a place of understanding that compromise isn't a bad word, then you're going to miss out on a lot of opportunities. And that's just real life. It's when you get outside of your bubble, get outside of your knowledge of understanding something, and then you let real life happen and say, you know what, they actually had a point. I couldn't see it because I was too busy talking. I was too busy yelling. I was too busy fighting against them to understand that I could fight with them and get things done.
Ms. Tant?
Very much the same answer. One of the things that I started out doing a long time ago when I started putting together things in the community is putting people around me who are a lot smarter than I am. And also people who had different experiences with maybe the same topic than I did. And so for me, being in the legislature is actually a very similar exercise. It's like I know that people, the one thing I do know is that I don't know everything. And so you've got to go to find out, just like he talked about with the data access that he studied in school, you've got to go find out what you don't know. And that is something that I think guides you to make the right decisions. And I take very seriously the comments and the concerns and the emails that I get, the data points that advocates share with me. I take those very seriously in forming an ultimate decision that I need to make on a bill, and also work to make a bill better. And what's Mick Jagger says, you can't always get what you want, but you get what you need. So exactly, you need to make sure that you're flexible. If you're incalcitrant, you're never going to get what you want, ever. So you've got to be flexible, and you've got to have an open mind so that you can listen and learn, and then take what you learn to make the product that you're working on a better product, because otherwise it won't be as good.
So I'm going to venture to guess here, and this is probably a bad assumption, but I'm going to assume this, that some who have access to politics, their access and their viewpoint is from a national perspective, right? They hear a lot about D.C., and when you look at it from a D.C. perspective, there's a lot of probably discourse dysfunction. Representative Tan, I want to ask you a direct question in this regard. So you currently serve in the minority in a majority Republican legislature. So there's 120 representatives, 85 of them are Republicans. Mm-hmm. Senator Representative Tan is one of the 35 Democrats, and yet your track record is you've been able to get legislation passed every year to the governor and signed into law, which would require you to be able to work across the aisle. Now, some may assume that you're compromising, which I would attest that you're not, but you found a way to get success in regards to where, even though you're not in the majority party, be able to find good public policy. How are you able to cross the aisle, to penetrate and get the other side to look at what you're doing, where it doesn't become a back and forth, but they're looking at it from a public policy perspective, and then getting into the end goal, which is getting signed into law? That requires work to be done in educating both sides of the aisle. How are you able to do that in a successful manner? And what advice would you give to make that happen?
Well, one thing I don't do is stand up and holler about everything. I don't lob bombs unnecessarily. I don't... when I stand up on the floor to say something, it's because it's something that is a true data point that I don't think has come up. I try not to stand up on every issue, and we both have colleagues who will do that. And so that is the DC model, in my view. When you're just talking for a Twitter audience, or if you're just talking to be, in a little soundbite, the bills that I've been able to pass, and I have passed 10 in the 3 years I've been elected so far, I don't sponsor partisan bills. I try to sponsor bills that are going to help people, help families, help people like my son, for example. Those are nonpartisan bills, but then I make sure that, for one thing, I know that not everybody understands the bills that I've got. So I go and sit down with staff. Then I sit down with the chair of the committee. I sit down with the vice chair of the committee, and I sit down with the ranking Democrat of the committee, just to ask that the bill be heard, bill be scheduled for hearing. I work every level of the process, because that was my background as a lobbyist back in the 1400s, and so I was in the advocacy space for a very long time, from about 18 years before I took a hiatus to have my kids. And so that was just that working and respecting the process. So my first year, I remember being like, okay, I've got the assumptions are going to be, against me. I'm a Democrat in a minority, and they're going to assume that I'm going to be a loudmouth, because that's some of my friends are. And I sponsored a bill, and so I went in and I sat down with the Speaker's Chief of Staff. And I said, I respect every level of this process. And you don't know me and I don't know you, but I wanted to come and just make sure I got to know you and make sure I worked with you on my priorities for this session. And so that was, I just didn't leave out any sphere. And every bill, every committee that my bills were geared to be, were referenced to, I went and did the same exercise with every chair, every staff, every vice chair, and then I worked every member of the committee to get their votes. And so and then the same with the Senate. And Senator Simon and I carried a bill together last year, we both worked very hard at every level of the game, at every level of the process to make sure it got across. And then when it came time for the governor's office, I contacted the governor's legislative people, and I said, let me know if you have any questions about this. And of course, got some folks to send in some letters of support and what have you. And so I just try to keep an open door of communication. And I actually don't just keep the open door, I go open the door for communication.
So it's the lost art of communication. Still
It really
talk to people.
is, to just talk to people. And what I found along the way is that in doing that, my colleagues have an interest as well. Well, there's always somebody touched by some piece of legislation or some policy or some interest that, when I passed the license plate bill for the state parks, that was very exciting to a lot of the members of the legislature. So it was just one of those things where you just find out in those conversations that you have more in common than you have not.
Well, Senator Simon, is just the opposite for you. So you're in the majority in the Senate. Of the 40 senators, there's 28 Republicans and there's 12 Democrats. And so you're a freshman, but you're in the majority. You also chair the Senate Committee on Education. And so one topic creates a lot of comments and some would even say a counter to civil discourse in its school choice. You sponsored a large bill this past session. Many may not know that you're an only child. I mentioned in your bio from Boynton Beach, and so you and I have had conversations. You share some great counsel your mom's given you. But this past session, you got a chance, I think, firsthand to really hear from all sides, see people's behaviors, actions, so on and so forth, social media. Speak to what you've learned about yourself in that, but also speak to how you're able to maneuver that, because going into it, you kind of expect some level of pushback, but how are you able to remain who you are in the midst of that? Because that, again, school choice, even on a national scale, depending upon what audience you in, produces a lot of reaction that sometimes isn't what's complementing what we're talking about today.
Well, I appreciate that and appreciate the question. One, clarity, I was born in Boynton Beach.
Yeah, Boynton, Pompano.
I grew up in Pompano Beach.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Let's get that right now. Yeah.
Pompano is always on the map. Just get anybody from Pompano in here.
Nobody from Pompano?
Come on. Come on.
They like, where's Pompano?
How about Duval? Got any Duval people in the room? I'm a Duval girl.
So Ely High School, where I went to school, Blanche Ely High School, colors are orange and green. Grew up orange and green. Pompano Chiefs, our youth football program, orange and green. Okay.
And let me just say before you respond, let me just say there's only one real orange and green school in Florida, and it's not down in Miami. Just make that known up front.
Well, and this wasn't in Miami.
Okay,
this was in Pompano.
Make
See,
it known.
That's the problem.
Carry on,
You
sir.
understand.
Carry on, sir.
No, but so you hit on some points, and that school choice bill was really and truly personal for me. And I'll get to the compromise on the back end, but it was personal for me because I'm not sitting here if my mother had made the choice that she made. School choice doesn't mean that you're leaving public schooling, going to private school, or going to charter school, or going to homeschool. School choice can also mean you're leaving one public school and going to another public school. And that was the case for me. Growing up in Pompano Beach, I grew up on the side of town on the other side of Dixie Highway. And there wasn't a whole lot of success that my mom saw looking out our front door. And so what she did, she worked for Publix Supermarket, worked for Publix over 35 years. Thankful to Publix for all that they've done for my family. For 35 years. And my mom worked on the other side of town. And so back then, there was no school choice. And you could be prosecuted for going to school outside of your zone. But my mother used her work address so that I can get to a better school which was Pompano Beach Elementary. And it gave me an opportunity to get around other kids and other families that I didn't go to school with when I was in my neighborhood. And it gave me a viewpoint that I had never really seen growing up the way I did. My first time I can remember it, I was in the 5th grade, and one of my friends asked if I would sleep over. And I never slept over. My mom didn't allow me to do sleepovers. And so after I begged and begged and begged, she finally let me and said, sure, you can sleep over, but I'll come and pick you up on Saturday morning. And so I got a chance to sleep over at his family's home. And we all woke up that morning. We all sat down at the breakfast table. We all sat down and had breakfast, his family and myself. And I'll say this, and some of the older folks will know exactly what this is, but I got a chance to taste Ovaltine. You didn't have Ovaltine in my neighborhood. And I sat down with that family, and we just had a discussion of what our week was like. That didn't happen in my house. My mother, I was a latchkey kid. So when my mother went to work in the morning, I got up, I sat in the car in the parking lot until it was time for school. She took me to school, but when I got home from school, there was a bus service that picked us up, but when I got home from school, there was no one there. And on Saturday mornings, my mom worked. She worked a lot so that she can provide. And so I understood that there was a different way of life out there that I hadn't experienced, and many of my friends growing up in my neighborhood, which was Kendall Green, hadn't experienced. And so I had something to aspire to. And so that's why school choice was so important for me, because what it allowed me to see is our kids don't all learn the same. You all don't learn the same. And sometimes the atmosphere that is presented at a school isn't conducive to you succeeding at your highest degree. And that I wanted to give parents the opportunity and the choice so that our kids can be in the best possible situation for them. Not for the system, but for the student. And so that's why I was such a big proponent. But I also wanted to take a look at what are the barriers that we're putting in place for our public schools? How do we start to bring down some of those barriers? Because as Mr. McGhee talked about, I sit as the chair of pre-K through 12 education. And there's an educational code book that's about 3.5 inches thick of all of the standards and regulations that our public school teachers and staff have to comply with. And so I said, no, we need to get rid of some of those things. And that will be a heavy push in what I'll be doing here in the next couple of weeks, because all of these deregulation parts have come back. And so I'm going to start going through each one of them, and there's a spreadsheet full of them, and start tackling, okay, this is dated, we need to get rid of this. This is hindering our students, this is hindering our teachers from being able to teach at the highest degree they possibly can. And so that wasn't something that was in the school choice playbook, but it was something as a husband of a former educator. My wife was a special education teacher over at Frank Nims, which is a couple blocks from here, that she saw that these are problems in the classroom in our public schools. And so we started to tackle those as well. And so that's when we go back to that compromise. It's not something that's politically expedient. It's not something as a Republican and a supermajority that I had to do. But sitting down with the president of the Senate, she agreed that we need to do something with our public schools. And so that's what we did. And I'm excited about it. I'm excited to see the change as we move forward, because I'm excited for our kids, more importantly, because they'll have greater opportunity with those deregulation opportunities that we're putting in the next bill that'll come behind.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we have about 25 more minutes. I mentioned at the outset we were going to allow for audience questions. There are microphones in both aisleways. If anyone here has a pressing question you want to pose to both or one of them, I would invite you to come to the microphone at this time. Please come forward. Again, there's a microphone here on either side. Please, if you wouldn't mind, state your name, classification, so everybody will know, especially if you're getting ready to graduate. My man right here told me he's a rising senior. We had a bathroom conversation. He was like, man, this old man talking to me in the bathroom. I'm sorry, bro, but tell us your name, man, where you're from, your classification.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I am Jared Jackson, a senior business administration scholar from Daytona Beach, Florida. And today, my question is to honestly, all of you can answer it. Civil discourse. You know, when I first saw the flyer for the occasion, I honestly didn't know what it meant. So I did a simple Google search, and I wanted to know, how important is it, for a career in politics, is civil discourse? Can y'all just speak to that for me real quick?
Great question.
How important is civil discourse?
Yes.
In politics.
I think it's incredibly important. I mean, it is really the decorum of the chamber, the decorum of the work you do on committee can fall apart that fast with one comment. And then we don't get anything done for you that we're up there with. So I think it's vitally important, and I think it is incumbent, at least in my view, and maybe some of us don't have colleagues who subscribe to it, but I think it's incumbent upon us to conduct ourselves with civility and with discourse. And the other thing is, when you do depart from that, you then throw up those blocks and those barriers to listening to one another. And I've seen it happen in committee when two sides of an issue are fighting against each other. It's when you can pull the sides together and say, what's the real issue here, that you often will find that compromise that Senator Simon spoke about with the educational stuff. But if you can't do that, if you're screaming at each other, whether you're a politician or whether you're an advocate or whether you're a citizen.
And I will touch on that a little bit. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to go back and I encourage all of you, read the bills. Things that you're passionate about, actually go back and read the bills. You want to see the bill language. Read for yourself. Don't allow someone to tell you what something says. Read it for yourself. But also go back and look at things that are getting done. The loudest voices don't get things done. They can stand up there and they can shout and yell in a microphone, but look at actually what they get passed. Not what they talk about, but actually what becomes law. It is that decorum, that collegiality that actually gets things done.
The respectfulness.
In the Senate, because there are only 40 of us, to get things to the floor, regardless that we have a supermajority or not, to get things to the floor, they still have to come through committees. Things can still be shot down and never get to the actual floor because of personalities.
Correct.
And so it's important that you have that decorum to talk with one another about your issues instead of always trying to show up in front of a microphone and show someone up and make them look bad, to get things done. And at the end of the day, it's not about how much you yell, it's about what becomes law.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Sir, give me your name, classification. Where you from?
Good morning. My name is Darrick Anderson. I'm a third-year physics scholar, originally from Clarksville, Tennessee.
Okay.
And I
Ask your
thank
question,
you,
please.
I thank you all for coming and taking time out of your day to come speak to us common folk. I have two questions for each of the senator and representatives. So I'll just ask one at a time to make them more palpable. So, given what it seems to be the microscope lately that Florida politics seems to be under, recently we've had a lot of non-government orgs come out and, like the NAACP, and issue travel warnings to African Americans coming outside of the state and entering Florida. We've had organizations like the Southern Poverty Law Center calling Florida-based groups like Moms for Liberty, hate groups and whatnot. And recently, Vice President Harris came and denounced what she believes to be inequity in the Florida changes to the African-American K-12 curriculum. And so my first question for you would be, how fair or unfair do you believe to be the criticism in the microscope that Florida politics seems to have been placed under lately? And I'll stop right there and ask my second question.
Well, one, I appreciate your question, and thank you for your engagement, which goes back to what I actually said in the prior question. Go back and read bills for yourself. They are going to, and I had someone say this to me one day. They called me up, and they are an elected official, and they called me up questioning about a particular bill. And their response to me was, I don't want to go back and read the bill. I want you to tell me what it says. And therein lies a problem. Because if we're all sitting around waiting for someone to tell us something, instead of doing the research for ourselves, we're going to be emotionally swayed. When I told you I didn't get into politics, I didn't grow up in politics, I ran from politics for a long time. And I'll try and be quick in telling this story. I grew up the way I did. In 2024, I had a pastor call me up, and I was in the NFL at the time, and I was still playing in the middle of my playing career, and he calls me up, and he says, Corey, I need to sit down with you. And I said, sure, come on by the house. And he sits down, and he proceeds to tell me God's calling you to politics. And I laughed. And I said, well, I'm not really interested in politics. My interest was, I saw where my taxpayer dollars were going, and I didn't like it. But I wasn't interested in going into politics. From that point in 2004, all the way through the last several years, I kept getting pulled into the process. And I kept saying no. And then the last time I was asked to run, I went back home and I told my wife, and I said, listen, I got called in today and they asked me to run. And she says, God's taken away all your excuses as to why you can't do this. And so that's why I stepped into this arena. I say all that to say this. A part of that is I needed to grow from an emotional intelligence standpoint to realize I don't have to have a visceral reaction to everything that I hear, and also look at the motivations and the motives of those that are espousing a certain way of thinking. Meaning, when the Southern Poverty lawsuit group or the NAACP comes out and they say something, one thing that I know for certain, and this isn't what we came here to talk about, but I'm going to talk about it. Us as black folks, we have an emotional response to a lot of things in terms of when it comes to race. They know that they can get a reaction out of us. If they say that something's racist, then something's racist. And so automatically our lens is turned on to see everything through the lens of race. And so we tend to, well, if they don't agree with me, then they're racist. Once you call someone racist, the conversation stops. There's no more dialogue, because now that person has to battle against and try and convince you that they're not racist and they're not talking about the issue. And it works. It works every single time. Every single time. And so go back and see the attacks when they start talking about ways to separate us. We get separated on every line. Think about it. Take a hard look at how the world tries to separate us. They separate us on race. They separate us on religion. They separate us on vaxxed, unvaxxed. Think about it. They try to create class. Oftentimes, our biggest issues are class issues. They're not race issues. I represent 13 counties. In those 13 counties, I see a lot of poor folks. Out of the 13 counties that I serve, 12 of them are fiscally constrained counties. Meaning at the end of the day, their ad valorem tax base doesn't support a functional government, so they have to live on grants. And when I spend time in these communities that don't look like us, they have the same struggles as poor folks that I grew up around. But we've created this us versus them mentality, and really what it is, it's a class situation, because some of these families feel no privilege whatsoever. They don't. But if we can pull race, we can keep us separated. The largest voting bloc for Democrats are blacks. We show up at a clip of about 90%, 92% and vote Democrats. So what well do you think they're going to go to keep your vote? They're going to keep going to the racial way because they know that we're going to respond with a visceral reaction instead of actually looking at the bills and actually reading them and what they actually say. Last year I filed a bill, and we ran a bill and passed a bill and signed it into law. Since 1994, I think it was, African American history is being it's mandatory to teach in every class, teach at every public school. The bill that Representative Benjamin and I passed last year, who was a Democrat, brought the accountability measures to make sure that there was a scoring system, an accountability system to ensure that it's being taught in our public schools. Now, that bill passed 138-0 in the House and 40-0 in the Senate. But it got very little traction. Media didn't talk about it at all. Why is that? Because there has to keep up this separation between blacks and whites. We can't allow them to think that they're the same. We can't allow them to think that there are actually Republicans that agree that this should be a part of our discussion in our schools. And that's problematic. So that's why I tell you, read bills for yourself. Don't get caught up in why the separation is being created amongst us. It's important that we read for ourselves. Question everything. Question everything. Even the things that you agree with. Question it. Don't take anybody's word for it. Go do your own research. It's important.
So I'm going to let you ask your second question. Representative Tan, I'm going to let you respond. But I want him to give the second question now because for the sake of time. And then we'll give you a chance, my young lady, to ask a question. We're going to have to wrap up. We have a hard stop at 10:45. Ask your next question.
Ms. Tan, so I missed you at the FAMU Day at the Capitol. I'm so sorry. We did speak with your aides, though, and they were awesome. So my second question was going to be, what do you hope to be your biggest political impact in helping the growth and development of places like Florida A&M for us as students and future graduates as we enter the workforce and start families for ourselves and leave this atmosphere, which is very different from the outside world that we will encounter? Thank you.
That's a great question. So first of all, in respect to, I'm going to answer your question first. So I'm on the Higher Ed and Workforce Committee. I'm the ranking member for that committee. So we worked very hard this last session. Senator Simon carried the bill in the Senate, but I was the one that brought the model to the committee on the House side that ended up being adopted. And that basically takes into and codifies what I think is the best standard, the gold standard practice for what should be happening. Meaning that we are working with employers, higher ed, with the career source folks, with the chamber, to make sure that we are creating job certifications and degree programs that will actually put you to work and meeting the needs of that workforce by consulting the employers and by bringing more employers in so that we can ensure that you get a job in a field that's going to pay you well and so that you will succeed in. So that is a key issue for me, as always has been. I've created several different job force models for different populations in this state and or in this county, and I intend to continue to do that work. And I think that FAMU is very much a part of that. By the way, I took classes at FAM when I was an FSU student. They were my favorite classes that I took, and I loved being on this campus. In respect to the previous conversation, I was also on that same committee when some of these bills came forward on the House side. And we had 222 speakers very concerned about the bill that was being heard. I think it's incumbent upon us to listen to the NAACP and to listen to the concerns of black leaders and to black citizens about what their views are. I mean, it is a visceral reaction. Some of it's well-founded, some of it may not be. But I think that if we don't hear that, we're not going, and I think that Senator Simon and Representative Benjamin's bill was probably another way to come at that issue to mitigate some of that. And I think it was an appropriate thing to do, because I do think that there is the growing tension in our state is legitimate. And I think that if I were, and I understand why some of these folks don't want to come to Florida right now, and it's not just African Americans. There's other groups that don't want to come. And I think that we've got some work to do as public policymakers to address that, because I think that is something that we don't want happening in our state. And I think that we will work towards, people like Senator Simon and I will certainly work to address some of those things. But I do understand the concerns that were raised by the NAACP and some of the other groups. And I think that they should be listened to and those concerns be addressed.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, we'll end with you, give you a chance to ask your question. Give us your name, where you're from, and classification.
Greetings. I am Sequoia McKenzie, a fourth-year business administration major from St. Petersburg, Florida. And today my question is for Representative Tant. So as a former 2008 community organizer for President Barack Obama, could you talk about some of the challenges you faced while advocating for minorities? And how did some of this help you with securing a spot within the Florida House of Representatives?
So I didn't catch all of that question. The 2018?
At 2008, you were a former...
2008, yes. So Senator, Barack Obama became our president in 2008, and I was a very strong supporter of his, and I was until, and actually was the Obama Victory Fund fundraiser for him here in North Florida. I thought he was an exemplary president, and I thought that he did a good job. I think that we have seen some changes in the conversation since he was president, and I think that we can do better than we have been doing. But I think that, like, for example, I'm going to get to the Florida issues really fast. So with the school choice bill, for example, with the school choice bill, what I saw was my concerns that I raised, and again, I took this to the committee chair on the House side. I worked very directly with all of them. What I was concerned about is what I do in this community every day. People contact me every single day about a child who's failing in a school. And so what I do is try to help them find the best place. A lot of them are disabled children, and a lot of them are African-American disabled children. And so when they're failing in a school, whether it's a public school or a private school, my job is to help them find what's the best place for them. So I immediately get to work on them, and I've advocated for that. I've changed school policy on that since my son was born in 1998. So that has been a singular focus of mine since for the last 25 years. And so, and it's always been about the child who's being left behind. And so that is, and I was a school choice proponent. As my son went to Rose Speech and Academic for a little while. He went to Leon High School. He went to Hawks Rise Elementary. One of my other children went to School for Arts and Sciences. And so we've been across the gamut of all of that. But so Senator Simon's right. The parents need to find the right place for their kid. But what my concern was, is as a parent, making sure that when a parent is shopping for a school, that they're comparing apples to apples. And is their child going to get in this school what they're hoping they're going to get, and not buying into a system that is not going to serve their child. So that was some of those standards is what I took to the process on the House side to make sure was addressed, because I think that it's easy to fall prey to what you want to hear versus what's actuality. And so a lot of our schools that are in the school choice program don't have to. You can leave a public school with an IEP 14 pages long, and they can just toss it in the garbage. And so just knowing that and explaining that, and that disclosure to parents, which the bill included, was that this is something that we are not going to be able to necessarily do. So they need to just those kind of parental disclosures, so that when you're, and then also looking at school grades across and understanding what the teaching staff is like versus the teaching staff on another side. So all of that was part of my advocacy for people with African American children with disabilities, and also non-African American children with disabilities, to make sure that parents knew what they were getting when they were doing that. So those kind of things, and that work in the advocacy space is something I've done on a regular basis since long before I was ever engaged in politics. So I ever even thought about being in politics. I was never going to do this, but here we are.
So the Honorable Corey Simon, the Honorable Allison Tant, The Honorable Rattler Darrick McGhee, we appreciate you. Please join me in a round of applause for our panelists. And if we could, to close things out, have our Honorable 12th President of Florida A&M University join us to close the event.
Well, this has just been incredible. I want to thank Ms. Macbeth and her team of one, Ms. Milan, for official name. I want to thank Provost Watson for bringing this incredible panel here. Right, these two individuals and Darrick just made this an outstanding way to start these discussions. I hope you saw the common theme between all three of them, really. But our elected officials, and that is they care about people, right? And they've been working on the behalf of people long before they were elected to the Florida House or the Florida Senate. And you can see the genuine passion and concern that they have for people. And I just want to thank y'all for that. And also for your support of Florida A&M University. But just to make sure that everybody knows this, the sky is actually orange and green, okay? Just so you would know. But I just want to thank you so much for what you've done to support these communities. There's a lot of special places everywhere, but I can guarantee you it's not debatable the support that you provided to Florida A&M University in your tenure. So thank you for that. There's been a major difference in the life of this institution and the lives of the students who come to this institution. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you.